Hello, and welcome to Critical Weight Theory. And welcome back if you've listened to this podcast before. I don't know if you have, but I've kind of debated if I wanted to record this episode because, for one thing, there's no guarantee that anybody is going to be interested in this type of review. But I also previously did a negative review of a charity song or a charity single, and that was one of those ones where they covered the song Imagine by John Lennon. So I figured, you know what, why not sort of try a different type of review and look at a song that's actually more original, that's not just a cover of John Lennon's Imagine, which I thought was, sort of an odd song choice. And that was my main critique of that. Um, in this case it's original, so there's at least that much going for it. You're not taking an already established song and sort of you know holding it up as a sort of new song. This is like a different type of charity single already because of that fact alone. So it's early 2005 when it was released, in the wake of one of the most devastating natural disasters of our time, the Indian Ocean tsunami. Out of that tragedy came a song of solidarity, unity, and hope. And it was French, so I'm probably going to butcher these pronunciations, but it was pronounced like Et puis la terre. It already sounds funny for me to say it, but I think that's semi accurate. So, a little bit of background: the song was created by ASIE, short for Artiste Solidaire Ici pour eux, and that translates to Artists United for Them. This wasn't a small project, really, it was a massive collaboration of over 60 French speaking artists, spearheaded by singer songwriter Patrick Bruel. His goal was simple but urgent: to raise funds for communities shattered by the tsunami. So, a perfectly valid cause, and I honestly am not sure how much money they raised successfully with this track. It doesn't seem to be as well remembered as We Are the World or something like that, which is obviously a major charity song that people still remember today. But this one's at least it's memorable, at least to some people. And it was released on January 30th or 31st, 2005, somewhere around there anyway. And A Puis la Terre is it's a charity single. It was written by Brule with lyricist Marie Florence Gros and Amanda Stair, I believe it might be pronounced. And it runs just over 5 minutes, but in that time it carries the weight of grief, compassion, and the determination of rebuilding, I should say. And what's interesting about a charity single is that quite often they end up sounding a little bit like the Lion King, a song from the Lion King soundtrack, one of those uplifting ones. And this one's really no exception. It's got that vibe. So it's a little bit bittersweet. It can come off as seeming melodramatic and whatnot. But you have to wonder how hard would it be to even write a charity single that sounds dramatically different from this one. It's hard to come up with a format that would be totally unique and unpredictable. And plus you're trying to appeal to a mass audience, and most mass audiences appreciate pop music more than something that's like, I don't know, like a death metal anthem or something like that. So you don't really expect to have like a bunch of weird stuff thrown into a charity single. So I was trying to keep that in mind as I listened to it. And the lineup is like a who's who of French music. So of course that means I don't know any of these people, but from what I understand, these people are considered legends. You've got Charles Aznavour, uh, Johnny Holiday, Jean-Jacques Goldman, Francis Cabrel or Cabral, Veronique Sanson, Zazie, Laura Fabian, Angoon, and let's see who else. Well, you got a bunch of other ones like Garou, Corneille. I believe that's how that one is pronounced. It's spelled Corneille. You've also got uh, Pascal Obispo, Jennifer, like Jennifer, only with a French pronunciation. Another one is Nolwenn Leroy, or Leroy. I don't know how that's pronounced when it's French. Uh, Catherine Laura, Etienne Dao, and maybe that's a reason to listen to this episode because my butchering of French pronunciation could be funny in its own right. But anyway, those were my attempts to pronounce names that I believe are French. So, you know, I did try to look up the pronunciations, but I still probably got them wrong. But you also have many other people. Those were just some of the people involved. And each voice adds its own texture, making the track feel like a chorus of solidarity across different generations and genres. Like there's a rapper thrown into the mix. And the music video that accompanied the song blends footage of the artist performing with raw emotional imagery. So you've got these like I don't know. I can't really say what how appealing the guys are. You know the males who are singing, but definitely some beautiful looking ladies, and it's interspersed with images of children and devastated landscapes. Although I don't now that I think about it, I didn't really see that much of the devastation in the video, but they had some images of children, and the video has faces that carry the weight of loss. In other words, and it's not too jarring to have the those images interspersed with images of these pop stars. It was surprisingly well done because I'm sure that some people would watch this and it'd be like maybe a little bit too hung up on the contrast of having these celebrities who look like they're doing perfectly fine and just in some cases looking basically flawless, and then you've got these like kids who have gone through devastating circumstances. Some people might not like that contrast, but I thought it actually worked okay here. I wasn't upset with it personally. I don't know, maybe I just don't get upset too easily, but I wasn't too much bothered by really anything about this project. Like I said, I think the main thing is just that it's not really my type of music, but what sort of music would actually work in a scenario like this. You're not. I've already kind of gone over that, but you're probably going to have at least some pop elements, and there's a young Asian boy that's on the singles cover art that's featured in the video, I believe. So the visuals weren't just background, they're reminders of why the song exists in the first place. And, that makes it seem less arbitrary. And of course, it's not really arbitrary to show the artist. So I don't see anything that was totally incongruous about the way that the song was presented. The artists all sound reasonably well blended together. I mean, it's always a little bit jarring when you go from one singer to another one, unless their voices sound basically identical. You're always going to notice something like that, but sometimes that can be done pretty smoothly, and I think it was done pretty well in this song. And at its core, I a puis la terre speaks to fragility and resilience. The lyrics and imagery, I think they show how nature can destroy in an instant, but also how compassion and solidarity bring people together. And there is, like, the video that I watched had the English lyrics on the screen, so you didn't have to be in a total fog about what they were saying if you don't speak French. So that's always a plus to have the song available with these subtitles if you want to know what they're saying if you don't speak the original language. The song is about rebuilding. So beyond fundraising, it was a cultural moment, and it's sort of a timeless piece that doesn't just reflect on one disaster but on humanity's need to unite when the world feels broken. And boy, that's another reason to kind of celebrate moments like this. Sure, these charity songs might be flawed, and I might even critique some aspects of them, or you might, or anybody out there. But at the end of the day, I think it's better that we have songs that do this than just songs that like trash people or whatever, and that are just not trying to make any sort of positive difference. I mean, you might say this is only a you know a little song or whatever, and maybe it wasn't as impactful as one might like. But I think the mere fact that people even tried to make a difference, or uh, even if a person is more cynical and they think they're just trying to look like they're making a difference, that still is better than you know not really doing anything whatsoever. Unless the charity is a fraud or something like that, but there's obviously no evidence of that I could find. So there's no there's no scandal related to the single. I'm not aware of the individual artists in the video. I don't know if any of them have been in any sort of trouble or quote unquote canceled or anything over the years. So I can't really speak about that. But what I can say is that the song works well enough. Uh, it's it's a charity single, sure, but it's also a snapshot of a global moment when music was a vessel for healing, or at least an attempt at a vessel for healing. So the voices were well done. The French speaking artists, I think they channeled a message of unity and hope, and I think it's perfectly probable that most of the people there were heartfelt. I don't think there's a stereotype about celebrities that they actually don't care about people or whatever, but I think some of them do. You know what I mean? They're not all abusers or just pure megalomaniacs. I think some of them do care. Maybe they occasionally uh, have a scandal that kind of you know threatens any positive message that they might try to convey. But i- in a lot of ways, I think there's a there's a reason to not just hate all celebrities. I get kind of burnt out on that sort of view as well. It almost sometimes makes me want to celebrate celebrities more often, when some people are just like, "Oh, you gotta hate Hollywood," or in this case, hate these French celebrities or whatever. I sometimes want to go in the other direction and actually remind people why these people are famous in the first place. They're entertainers. They actually, in some ways, improve people's lives. And, they're not always something that we should scoff at. You got to take the good with the bad. You got to look at some of the positive aspects of what these people do. And then, of course, you can focus on the scandals or whatever. So, it's you got to take the good with the bad when it comes to these sorts of things. So I've yacked enough here. I've fumbled with my talking here and there, but I'm just trying to do an interesting and relatively off script sort of review, even though I had notes here to help me pronounce the names and then understand what I'm supposed to you know do with the information, with the charity single and know what to talk about and all that. So there was spontaneity as well as me reading from a script. So it's both raw and polished at the same time. And that's about it for today's episode. If you want to look at this song, you can find it on YouTube. And thanks for tuning in to Critical Weight Theory. Until next time, take care and remember the power of art in times of crisis.